So welcome, guys. We've got about half an hour together, and to be honest, I've never done anything like this before, kind of presented on U2. So bear with me as we go through, and I've kind of been thinking, like, I've been together almost 40 years. Like, what do you do when you talk about the journey of U2 and how they've kind of mirrored and clashed and been a prophetic voice in culture in the church? What do you focus on? Kind of go through each of their albums, or what? So the way I've approached is kind of digging into 4 points of time or phases in their career over their 40 years as a band. So just going to kind of touch on those 4 areas as we go through the next half hour. But also feel free to call out questions and comments and things like that as we go along. Does that sound cool? My first experience of U2 was 1984, the very first concert I ever went to here in Adelaide, just after they'd released Live at Red Rocks. You remember Live at Red Rocks? And they played at Apollo Stadium to about 3,500 people. And they're kind of this fledgling band, certainly the first time they toured Australia. And I was there. I remember kind of going with my big brother, who pushed me down the front, in front of him, kind of being right at the front of the stage was there. These were the days where we didn't have kind of crowd barriers. You were right there, and Edge was right there. And I remember just kind of looking up, and there's Edge, kind of going, "Wow, that's cool. He's a guitarist. He's right there." And Edge noticed me, and I still vividly remember. That was a long time ago. Edge just kind of looking down at me and going, I'm sure he acknowledged me, and I'm sure he'd remember me if I bumped into him. So no, he's got a very good memory, unlike me. So that was 1984, and for me it was kind of was like spring chicken back then. But then started to get into their music and really kind of follow them over the ensuing years. A story I recall from a friend of mine who was working as a chef in Ireland a number of years ago. She said when she was working there, a good friend of hers was a plumber, a bloke who was a plumber, and one day he was catching up with my friend Tracy in Ireland. Recalled the story of how that day he got a call out to an elderly lady, and gone there and can't remember what the problem was, but kind of working on this issue to do with her plumbing in a unit, and was just kind of making small talk, about where she lived and her children and things like that. And she was remarking how one of her children, her son, played drums, rock and roll band, lamenting the fact that it wasn't a real job, and that he was a musician, and one day he'd grow up and get a real job. And a friend of my friend kind of chuckled away and said, "What's your son's name? What band is he in?" Some silly name, U2. And go, "Oh, Larry Mullen Jr.'s mother." So I thought it was hilarious. Just imagine this Irish mother kind of going, "When you grow up, when are you going to get a real job, Larry?" Let me tell you a bit of the history of U2. Let me see if this works. Let me ask you guys, when did you first kind of discover U2? Is it kind of many years ago? Is it relatively new? What's the album or the period of time that you first came across U2?
That was the first concert I went to, so yeah, it was around that time as well.
Was that here in Adelaide? Memorial Drive? Wasn't that great? B.B. King, just wow. Yeah, that was huge, wasn't it? What about others?
Joshua Tree, is that an album?
Yeah. Is that an album?
Yes.
30 years ago.
In the Name of Love, was that on there?
Yeah, that was Unforgettable 5. Yep. Yeah, great. So their world tour, the 30th anniversary tour of Joshua Tree is happening at the moment. So if you're a fan of theirs on social media, it's just phenomenal that 50, 60,000 people a night at their concerts, I think in Mexico City a couple of nights ago. Joshua Tree was a hugely significant album in a period of time. What about others?
I grew up with Dad listening to Joshua Tree, so you grew up listening to U2, yeah.
Good father. Good father. Well done. That's what I call a good upbringing.
Still remember getting a truck from Baby, like racing to Target to buy it, and the day it came out, take it home and listen to it, and put it on the CD player and hear that something seemed like it was wrong with the speakers. Because they were doing something weird that they hadn't done on Umbrella Home.
Yeah.
And it was just
Separation of sound and...
I had a friend of mine who was massive into it. Like he weeked down an old year after that, there was an edition opening where we said Virgin Megastore in Bow Street, and he turned me on to them at the time. He and I went to see them in '92 in Melbourne.
Yep. Achtung Baby was a phenomenal album, wasn't it? It was just one of those periods of time where they just completely reinvented themselves and took the world kind of 12 months ago. What just happened? Oh, this is different. Do I like it? But an incredible album. So some of the formative stages of U2, I mean, Larry Mullen Jr. wanted to put together a band, so he put an ad on Mount Temple College, the school that they all attended, asking for band members to come and join his fledgling band. There's a great quote from Bono about Adam's early musical ability. Adam pretended he could play and used words like gig and talked about things like action on the bass. And we thought, this is a guy who can play. He was a liar. He actually couldn't play a note. Dave was just playing away on the acoustic and people just kept coming up, Dave being the Edge, kept coming up and saying, there's something wrong. And we couldn't figure out what it was until suddenly we thought, it's Adam. Adam can't play. He had his own distinctive style from the start. At first it was called bluff, but then it began to work. That's just kind of typical of at least the banter and the honesty that Bono and other members of U2 have, which I just love. This sense of, they kind of came together, a bunch of mates. I think Larry Mullen Jr. was 14, the other guys were 16. And the joke is also that Bono came to that first kind of rehearsal in Larry Mullen Jr.'s kitchen with an acoustic guitar, and they realised he can't actually play. And they said, why don't you try singing? Because he was quite a charismatic character, and so he started singing. So a really different opening for a band like that. So shortly after they came together, they were all part of a Christian fellowship called Shalom, and Shalom was actually today you call it a bit of an extreme Pentecostal group that met in houses. By the sounds of it, quite controlling, like moved in the gifts of the Spirit in phenomenal ways. And that formed a great bedrock of faith, I think, for all of them, the three of them that are professing Christians. But it also caused a whole bunch of tension for the band. They had great friendships. They were part of a couple of gangs in their city as well. Hence, Bono got his nickname from Bono Vox, which is just a nickname given to him. The Edge was also a nickname given that came from that friendship and those groups that they hung out with. The story goes that just before they released their second album, October, they were all in this Shalom fellowship, and someone had prophesied that the band was to split up because they couldn't see how they could be rock musicians and tour and be worldly and still be a Christian. And so the prophecy was given to the band that they had to split up. And the story goes that Bono and the Edge went for a walk on a beach late one night just before the release of October, wrestling with this, praying about it, talking about each other and kind of what do we do? Unfortunately, obviously they decided to stay together as a band. And that period of time was quite a tumultuous and challenging time for them in their faith. This spiritual community that they were a part of increasingly felt that they were becoming too worldly. And so ultimately it led to the band actually leaving the Shalom Fellowship and really not finding another specific church to go to. Bono has often remarked that he doesn't go to one particular church because if he went there, it would become a mega church immediately. But they have, through the time, they've had spiritual mentors and things like that that have met with them as a band and helped their faith grow. And one of the challenges for them also was, are we Christians who are musicians? Are we a Christian band then, or not? Kind of how does our art and our faith actually work together? What does it mean for three of us to be professing Christians and one to not be a Christian? So they're very honest in their vulnerabilities around that. What does it mean to be followers of Christ in a rock band? We don't want to be called a Christian band, but what does that mean anyway, to be a Christian band? What does it mean to be Christians in a band expressing a God-given talent? And some of those challenges, I think, really came forth in their music from their first three albums as well. So this is some of the early shots. Love the hairstyles, don't you, from the 70s, early 80s. So first album, Boy, in 1980, October 1981, War in 1983. And because of the culture they came from, where there was a war between Protestants and Catholics, that fed into their whole narrative and expression of what did it mean to be a Christ follower when two parties both professed to follow Christ but hated each other. How would they reconcile that faith? And Bono's own mother and father one was Catholic, one was Protestant. So he was kind of brought up in that environment. His mother died when he was young. But the wrestle and the tension of what is authentic faith, what does it mean to be a follower of Christ in that sort of culture where Christians hated each other and killed each other. And I think through these first three albums, it was significant in the journey of U2 because they were so vulnerable with their faith. If you look at songs like Gloria off the October album, it's a psalm. It's professing Christ. There's no ambiguity in terms of what they believe, how they understand God to be, and how important and significant their faith is to them. So from the outset, I think they kind of nailed their colours to the mast in terms of, we're followers of Christ. We're not going to separate that from our art form, as in music. But also, I think they gained a lot of followers in those early years because they were so overtly Christian, but they were actually really good at what they do. It wasn't like, we're Christians, but actually we're crap at music. They're Christians, but they're actually really good. They had something to say. And I think certainly for folk like me, that kind of really captured my attention. Kind of go, okay, there's something in this. As a fledgling wannabe musician as well, I kind of thought, actually, you can be in a band and kind of be cool, be popular, and sing songs about your faith and your spiritual journey as well. Maybe that's possible. Hands up if you, or tell me if you kind of got into U2 around October and War and that period of time, even Live at Red Rocks, which came out just after these. Anyone see the live stuff from Live at Red Rocks? Classic Sunday, Bloody Sunday, and yeah, what was that? It's great, isn't it? Yeah. And again, I mean, if you watch the live DVD, just the sense of passion and raw emotion from Bono is quite confronting, isn't it? In a good way. What was that?
He goes clambering all over the place when he's climbing the stage.
So one who didn't fall over in one of those and break his neck, wasn't it? It's quite a miracle. The next significant point was the release of Joshua Tree 30 years ago. And a couple of you mentioned that was a point at which you kind of discovered U2. I vividly remember when this song was released, still haven't found what I'm looking for. I was going to Pentecostal church at the time, album was released, and I kind of re-engaged with U2 at that point and just loved it. I loved the album, in particular loved that song. And for me, I kind of listened to it and read the lyrics, and it was kind of my statement of faith, the sense that, I'm a Christian, but gee, I've got so many questions. I've got doubts, lots of insecurities. Is that okay? And one of the things that I remember distinctly from listening to that song was a sense of maybe it is okay. However, the Pentecostal church I was going to at the time said, actually, I don't want anyone listening to U2. They've obviously lost their faith, because if they were Christians, they would have found what they're looking for. And I remember kind of hearing that from my youth pastor and kind of going, but really? It's that black and white, is it? And kind of going, no, I think you're crap. Forget it. I love you too. And continue to listen to them kind of going, no, actually, I think what they're saying and how they're expressing their faith and the tension of faith actually resonates with me. I think that is what authentic faith is about. There's just no one else in music at that time that was kind of giving voice and expressing some of these things that U2 did. The classic line from Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For: you broke the bonds, you loosed the chains, carried the cross in my shame. You know I believe it, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. One of the challenges from their fans, and especially the evangelical church in America, was, is this a statement of faith or a loss of faith? And I think more than any other album, people across the musical divide landed in one of those two camps. Either U2 have lost their faith, or it's a statement of faith. And my goodness, how powerful is that? Bono said, at one time I thought you had to have all the answers if you were going to write a song. So it was embarrassing to make a record that was filled with doubts and questions. Bono called that song a gospel song for a restless spirit. Others called it U2's spiritual obituary and kind of said they've lost it. Let's have nothing more to do with them. What were some of your memories and specific songs that you remember from this period of time, those of you that kind of connected with U2 around the release of this album? What do you remember?
Talks about held the hand of the devil. I remember that feeling unsafe.
I've held the hand of the devil. That's right. Clearly he's not a Christian. Clearly he loves Satan more than Jesus. Yeah. And part of the challenge for the church, and predominantly the American evangelical conservative church, was that, but what do you do that? What do you do with that? And how do you treat art in a way that, well, obviously, Bono hasn't sat and tried to hold the hand of the devil. No, he's talking figuratively. It's metaphor, it's imagery, it's art. And I think that's always been one of the challenges for U2, and that people just don't understand that. A bit like Jesus telling Psalms. Some people understood it, other people just said, "Oh, you're an idiot, forget it." But that was one of those classic lines where people said, "Whoa, evidence, he's of the devil." And then the challenge for us, like, okay, well, how do we try and make sense of this? Is this okay?
It's actually a question, but I'm wondering whether there was any discernible difference between the rise in their popularity between their Christian fans and their secular fans, or were everybody fans and it kind of rose at the same level? Because obviously this put off some Christians, but was it at this point that then the secular world opened up more to them, or?
Yes, good question. I think there's been ebbs and flows. I think when they performed at Live Aid, does anyone remember Live Aid?
Yeah.
Well, wasn't that just phenomenal? I mean, U2 just stole that. So there are events like that I think... Was that? The Queen were pretty good, weren't they? Certainly better than Led Zeppelin. So I think there were pivotal times like that where U2, from a secular community, were viewed as Christians and nutters. Events like Live Aid suddenly got them an enormous amount of respect. That sure, they sang about God and stuff, but we'll put up with that because, my goodness, they're an amazing band.
Do you think that it was that the secular community decided, well, we'll put up with that, or do you think that their honesty resonated with them?
I think
so it wasn't didactic?
Yeah, I think there's certainly an element of that, and it took a number of albums for their credibility to grow. I think it... I don't know, my observations are that a lot of people kind of said, you're too Christian, but gee, you're really good, you're great live, you're passionate. Is this God stuff a fad? And I think as you see the journey of U2, almost how they profess their faith matured and changed with each of their albums. And so I think they just gained respect from the secular community. To the point where one of my latest slides is when their Vertigo tour, when they finished with their concert with Walk On, was it Vertigo? After All That You Can't Leave Behind. They finished with the song Walk On and then went into Hallelujah. And a crowd of 60, 70, 80,000 people singing Hallelujah, or opening it with Amazing Grace and people singing that. You kind of go, that's, it's the Spirit of God there. That's pretty unbelievable. So I think those fans that aren't Christians have just built respect and kind of go, yeah, I may not believe what you believe, but, credibility because you've stuck at it.
But do you reckon because they sort of open themselves up. So I'm a fan. I'm not giving them a hard time. But they open themselves up to a dark side with some of that stuff. So when they jump from Memorial Drive to Amy Stadium, like the difference in that is essentially that there's the Mephisto stuff, and like he's kind of dressing as the devil and kind of doing that
absolutely.
Kind of. So it's gone from just this earnest choir boy sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that sense would then him mocking those that were saying that too and playing on that as well, I think. That was my take on it.
Yeah, it was this whole sense of art and faith and conservative culture, which was the classic. But yeah, classic Mephisto. And again, I remember that tour seeing at Memorial Drive and seeing come on that, thinking, I just felt really uncomfortable. I thought, well, why is he being the devil? Come on, Bono, you're not the devil, you're the Messiah. And just, I remember just not getting it, and then kind of going, well, maybe he's, my youth pastor was right all those years ago, maybe he's of the devil. But just kind of reading it and reflecting on it, kind of going, no, he's C.S. Lewis with the screw tape letters. He's mocked the devil and he'll flee from you. But most people didn't get it. Most people exactly thought, yeah, great, he's trying to be the devil, he's setting himself up as some spiritual guru.
He even talked about the embrace of the rock star thing, where for so long he'd been the anti-rock star.
Yeah.
And then just kind of, I can't avoid it. I've gone from 8,000 people in a concert to 25,000.
Yeah.
I just have to be the rock star now.
That's right. That's right. How do I wear my ego on the sleeve? And I think, and that's been part of the evolution of him. He's kind of increasingly articulated that well and talked about his own excesses and things like that. And it's fascinating reading some of his quotes. It kind of goes, I'm a semi-alcoholic, cigar-smoking, Bible-loving fan of Jesus. Here I am. That's right.
So you was talking about wearing, and then you said about going from Memorial Drive to Amy Stadium, so obviously their size and everything grew. And I'm just trying to recollect, does that coincide with him wearing the glasses? Was that, and you said, he couldn't handle the fame, so essentially is that, I don't know if I'm just being an English teacher with the symbolism here, is that something then that he can hide behind? Because he still hasn't taken those off, even though they have changed.
That was one of those, it's a really good point, that was one of those interesting things where probably only, certainly in the last 10 years, where people started to say, that you're a rock star, you wear your fancy glasses, your shaded glasses. And he came out and said, actually, I've got a condition with my eyes where exposure to bright light, I go blind. And he said, so, the prescription glasses, I have to wear them. And everyone went, oh, okay. But you wear glasses, but you look really cool at the same time. Because he often says, like, when they're doing concerts and he doesn't have his glasses on, if he catches one of the spotlights in his eyes, it momentarily blinds him because of the condition with his eyes. So. But the classic thing is when he gave the Pope his glasses was one of those moments where you kind of go, that's amazing, but my goodness, he copped a bit. And one of the things that has both attracted and brought a lot of haters to U2 is Bono's outspokenness about Africa. The story goes after Live Aid, he and his wife Ali went and spent, I think, 12 months in Africa. No one knew, but they just worked in orphanages and tried to make a difference. He came back and started a whole bunch of charities designed to try and support inequality in Africa and reduce debt, the Jubilee campaign and things like that. And again, the whole thing that was questioned with Bono and U2 is why you're doing this. You're just a bleeding heart, you're a rock star with a cause, is it just a tax dodge? Why are you doing this? And again, I think it wasn't until he proved that it wasn't just a fad, when he'd kind of been doing it for 15, 20 years, that people started to actually respect him, going, okay. And he says this, at the 54th National Prayer Breakfast in America a number of years ago, he got up and said, it's not a coincidence that in the scriptures, poverty is mentioned more than 2,100 times. It's not an accident. That's a lot of airtime. The only time Jesus Christ is judgmental is on the subject of the poor. As you have done it unto the least of these, my brethren, you have done it unto me. And so it became really clear that he practiced what he preached, that the reason why he was compelled to do this was because of the teachings and the model of Jesus. The third key point is when Pop came out in 1987. And again, I kind of remember this came out and going and buying it, because it was a U2 album and you bought it, kind of going, this is crap. This is crap. I love Discotheque, but the rest of it, I just thought, I don't know what to do with it. It sounds weird. The imagery behind it is just weird. It's not U2. Obviously forgetting that when Achtung Baby came out, I had the same reaction initially. But Pop was one of the albums that I really struggled to get into. It had a darkness to it, even more even more into a sense of despair and darkness with the album. Around that time, Bono said this: "I went looking for spirit and found alcohol. I went looking for soul and I bought some style. I wanted to meet God, but they sold me religion." Especially one of the songs called Wake Up Dead Man. And this was one of those points where Christians said, "See, he's lost his faith. He said the F word in a song. You can't do that if you're a Christian." The lyrics say, "Jesus help me, I'm alone in this world, and an effed up world it is too. Tell me the story, the one about eternity, and the way it's all going to be. Wake up, dead man." Again, what was lost in on many Christians is, that's actually drawn from Scripture. But in pop and the Pop Mart tour, the tension of consumerism, Christianity, and following the example of Christ was really brought out. U2's postmodern worldview allowed mystery and confusion to sit alongside faith. And again, a reflection on that period of time in their life, it was all about how does the Christian faith sit alongside rampant consumerism. And coming to Y2K as well, the sense of despair. What's going to happen with Y2K? Is the world going to collapse and blow up when the year 2000 hits? So 1987, those things were starting to peak. And Pop Mart really captured that. And the lemon, the big golden arch, all these sorts of things were almost a show of utter excess and waste, which also reflected much of American conservative Christianity at that time. The prosperity gospel was huge. The church in America is really very much focused on the AIDS epidemic and actually kind of neglecting and totally forgetting what was actually happening in Africa on their own doorstep and what they could do in environments like that. So again, that period of time for U2 was really kind of shining a light on the hypocrisy of the Western church. Then 2000, All That You Can't Leave Behind. Again, for me, it's kind of, I sort of lost a bit of my feel for U2 after Pop Mart, but hung in there. And I remember going to a friend's wedding, and as the bride came down, this song came on, boom, 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 boom. Kind of going, it's just cool. And then it kicked in. I thought, it sounds like U2. I still remember that at Adrian Rouse's wedding in Melbourne, and kind of going, this is amazing. I love it. A beautiful day. And the photo of the album cover, see about midway up on the far left, J33:3. Again, the symbolism in that comes from Jeremiah 33:3. Call to me and I'll answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. Bono referred to that as God's phone number. 5 minutes to go. So it felt like suddenly Bono and U2 had kind of re-engaged their faith. They felt more comfortable in their skin as followers of Christ, as a band on the journey that they were on as a band and as individuals. So with pop, songs like Wake Up Dead Man, there's a sense of gloom and despair kind of through those songs. All That You Can't Leave Behind, released in 2000, had a sense of new life, fresh hope, even optimism about the world and about Bono's faith. It really felt like he'd kind of finally was comfortable in his own shoes as a follower of Christ and being one of the biggest bands in the world. How many of you got into U2 with All That You Can't Leave Behind? Yeah? There's something uplifting about it, isn't it? I still remember getting it, and I think it's the first U2 album I've ever got where I sit and listen to all of the songs and just thought, I love them all. It's just, wow, this is really unusual. But there's still the detractors. I found this from holybibleprophecy.org. They say, based on the fact that the Bible says there are many antichrists and the son of perdition will oppose and exalt himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped and show himself that he is God, we ought to be especially alarmed and watchful when a public figure like U2 frontman Bono manifests such a blasphemous spirit of antichrist in conjunction with musical worship, idolatry and political power. There you go. Haters gonna hate. But it's interesting kind of doing some research and digging into, some of those that continue to hate U2 and see them as as idolaters and setting themselves up as some sort of false messiah and antichrist. This came out in 2002 and again kind of really captured that time. Can Bono save the world? Can he do it? Last slide. One of my favourite things a couple of years ago, the conversation I had with Eugene Peterson, where he sat down and talked about the message in the Psalms. What I loved about that was Bono saying, where are the modern psalm writers? Our worship writers should be psalmists. You know, and where is the angst? Where is the question? Where is the tension of faith that is being written about in our worship songs? Where are they today? I thought it was fascinating, and it was kind of, again, I thought, yeah, that's a prophetic voice of Bono saying we have a worship culture, but where's the voice for the, you know, the voice of Job, I guess, in our current worship songs? Where is that? One of my favourite quotes of his, and what's so powerful about the Psalms, as well as being gospel and songs of praise, they're also about the blues. It's very important for Christians to be honest with God. You know, God is much more interested in who you are than who you want to be. It just kind of captures that sense of a prophet in our time, kind of holding a mirror to culture and society and the church around him, but also kind of going, you know, here's a way forward. And I'm not just going to talk about it, I'm going to do it. And I'll cop the flack. But I do what I do because I'm a follower of Jesus and I want to follow his example. We're pretty much out of time. Any questions or comments about what I've flown through? If I had more time, I'd touch on where I kind of think they are at the moment and what's kind of happened in the last 6 or 7 years with the current songs of innocence and experience. Yeah, and the whole fiasco when they first released that on iTunes for free. Kind of going, what happened there, boys? But a couple minutes ago, any questions or comments? No? It's fine.
I love the thank you.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
I love Bono. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just love it. That quote.
It's good, isn't it? And one of the things that I'm relieved about is finally I think that he's been accepted by the evangelical church broadly. I think finally they kind of go, he's a bit different, he's a bit awkward. I wish he didn't swear, wish he didn't get drunk lots, wish he didn't smoke cigars, but we'll accept him. He's okay. No? What do you mean? Oh, I haven't. Oh, we have. But that's part of the hypocrisy of institutionalised church, isn't it? That we kind of go, well, this is what a Christian should be. And if they're in the media and if they're a rock star, well, we really want them to be a good role model. And Bono's not a good role model sometimes. Kind of go, well, yeah, I think we need to re-examine some of those things. So, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Pleasure.